What's going on, everybody? In this video I'm going to discuss arrays in Java. An array is a collection of values of the same data type. As a beginner, it might be helpful to think of an array as a variable that can store more than one value. It's a little more complicated than that, but that might be a good way to think of it. Let me give you a demonstration. Suppose we have a string variable, a fruit. Pick a fruit. I will pick an apple. And then, we can print our variable of fruit, which would give me an apple. Well, what if I told you that this variable can store more than one value if we were to turn it into an array? Here's how. After the data type of our variable, add a set of straight brackets, enclose any values within a set of curly braces. And there we go. We now have an array. We have an array of strings. This array can store more than one value, but they all have to be the same data type. In this case, strings. Let's add some more fruit. Let's add an orange, a banana, and a coconut. The name of your array should be descriptive of what it contains. Let's say fruits instead of fruit. Technically, in the English language, fruit would still be plural, but by adding an S, it's more descriptive that it contains more than one value. I know, English is a weird language at times. If I was to print my array of fruits, here's the result. Well, we get a memory address. Arrays fall under the category of a reference data type. If we access the name of our array, we're given a memory address. Each value within an array is known as an element. To access an element, we have to indicate an index number. After our array name, let's add a set of straight brackets, and then an index number. As is the case with many things in programming, to access the first of something, it usually has an index of 0. That applies to arrays as well. Print our array of fruits at index of 0. That's going to give you the first element of apple. For the next element, that would be an index of 1, which is orange. 2 would be banana. 3, coconut. If we attempt to access an element that doesn't exist, here's what happens. We get an exception. An exception is similar to an error. We have an array index out of bounds exception. This error message appears when you try and access an element that doesn't exist within an array. There is no index of 4. There's only 0, 1, 2, 3 in this case. Now, you do have the capability to change the value at a given index. To do so, we will take the name of our array, in this case fruits, specify an index using the set of straight brackets. At index of 0, let's set that equal to a string of pineapple, rather than apple. And then we'll print it. Print our array of fruits at index of 0. That would give us a pineapple, rather than an apple. By specifying the index, you can change any element. So fruits at index of 1 is now a pineapple. If at any time you need the length of an array, there's a built-in property for that. Let's say we have an integer variable of num of fruits, meaning number of fruits. To access the length of an array, take our array, in this case fruits, use dot, which is the access modifier, then type length. Give me the length of my array of fruits. How many elements are within this array? Take a guess. 4. There's 4 elements within this array. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you ever need the length of an array, use the length property of your array. This will return an integer, which you can assign to a variable if you would like. If you need to print all of the elements of an array, you could use a for loop. Here's how. We'll declare a for loop. We'll create an index of I equal to 0. How many times do we want to iterate this loop? Let's continue as long as I is less than. We need to determine the length of this array. Well, we can use that length property that we discussed. Take our array of fruits, access the length property. This should return the number 4. Continue as long as I is less than 4. Then we will increment our index of I. So our for loop, in this case, is going to iterate 4 times. Let's perform a test run. If I was to print my array of fruits at index of 0, this is what happens exactly. It's going to print fruits at index 0 4 times. Apple, 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 apple. What I need is to print each element of this array. We could use our index of I for that, so replace 0 with I. I is going to change during each iteration of this loop. We're increasing it by 1 after we complete each cycle of the loop. So here's what happens now. We get all the elements of our array: apple, orange, banana, coconut. This index of I is going to increase after each cycle of this loop, each iteration. Alternatively, rather than printing each fruit on a new line, we could use print. Then after printing each element, we could add a space character. That would print each element and separate each with a space, if you so choose. There's something called an enhanced for loop. An enhanced for loop will cycle once for each element within an array. We'll start with a normal for loop. To create an enhanced for loop, within the set of parentheses, we will list the data type of each element of the array, in this case strings. Now we need a unique identifier for each element within this array. Since we're working with an array of fruits, let's say fruit, singular. Then we need a colon, then our array that we're iterating through, in this case fruits. Basically we're saying, for every fruit in my array of fruits, do this. Let's print each fruit. Fruit will be the current element we're cycling through. Here's what happens. We print each fruit. We have all the elements of our array of fruits: apple, orange, banana, coconut. This is an enhanced for loop, also known as a for each loop. It simplifies iterating through a collection, such as an array. If you need to sort your array, there's a built-in sort method. We're going to access the class of arrays. You may need to import it. Import class arrays. So make sure you have this import. Import java.util.arrays. This class provides a lot of functionality when working with arrays. There's a built-in sort method. We're going to pass in our array of fruits to this method. We'll end up sorting the elements in this array alphabetically. Originally, the order of our elements was apple, orange, banana, coconut. But after sorting, they're now apple, banana, coconut, orange. They're all arranged alphabetically. Or if these were numbers, they would be arranged in ascending order. There's also a fill method with arrays. We can fill all the elements of an array with a given value. Again, we're going to access the arrays class, call the fill method, pass in our array, comma, the value we're going to fill the array with. Let's fill our array with pineapples. Then we'll use a for each loop to print each element. And here's our new array. We have filled our array of fruits with the value of pineapple. Alright everybody, that's an introduction to arrays. Think of an array as a variable, but it can store more than one value. And well everybody, those are arrays in Java. What is going on everybody? In this video I'm going to show you how we can enter in user input into an array. So let's get started. Before assigning values into an array, our compiler needs to know the size of the array beforehand. We have to first allocate space for the array. Let's begin by creating an array of strings. We'll create an array of strings. We'll enter in some food. I will name this array foods. Equals, add a set of curly braces, and then within this array you can enter in some values. Pick some food that you like. I'll enter in a pizza, taco, and hamburger. The size of this array is 3 elements. Once you set a size for an array, normally you can't change it. This array will have 3 elements. However, all the elements are already filled with values. To create an empty array, You don't want a set of empty curly braces. Then we're creating an array of no elements. Just to demonstrate that, I'm going to print the length of our array foods. Foods.length. This is going to give us 0. And we can't assign any values. Even if I attempt to, let's say foods at index 0 equals a string of pizza. Here's what happens. Well, we have an exception, an array index out of bounds exception. Before assigning values, we'll want to be sure that we're setting a size of the array, even if it is empty. Instead of assigning a set of values, we'll create an empty array. We'll set our array equal to, use the new keyword, type the data type of our array, straight brackets, and within the straight brackets, we'll set a size, a number. So let's say 3. We're creating an empty array that has space for 3 elements, 3 values. Let's try this again. The length of our array is 3. And we can assign the values. So let's say foods at index 1 equals a taco. Foods at index 2 will be a hamburger. I'll print all the foods in this array. We can use an enhanced for loop. List the data type. We're working with an array of strings. For every food in our array of foods, we will print each food. That would give us pizza, taco, hamburger. We have declared and instantiated an empty array and filled in the values later. Let's modify this program so a user can type in some values. Let's delete these lines. If we're accepting user input, we will need a scanner. We'll declare that and instantiate it. Scanner equals new scanner. Within the set of parentheses, type system.in. Import the class for scanner. Import java.util.scanner. And close the scanner when you're done, because I sometimes forget to do that still. Scanner.close. So we have an empty array of 3 elements. We'll create a for loop to iterate over the length of our array of foods. So for, we'll create a counter of int I equals 0. We'll continue as long as I is less than our array of foods length property, which returns 3, because there's 3 elements. Then increment I by 1. During each iteration of this loop, let's do the following. We'll output the following prompt. Enter a food. I'll use print instead of print line because I prefer that. We'll assign our array of foods at index of I. I changes during each cycle. At first, it's 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. We'll set that equal to, use our scanner to accept some user input, call the next line method. Okay, let's perform a test run. Currently, we have an array with 3 empty elements. We'll cycle this loop 3 times, because the length property of the array is 3. Then print all the elements when we're done. Here's what happens exactly. Enter a food. Pizza, taco, hamburger. Here are the elements within our array of food. Pizza, taco, hamburger. Let's say that we change the size of the array. Let's say 4 this time. Pizza, taco, hamburger, hot dog. Pizza, taco, hamburger, hot dog. We're going to make a few changes. Instead of setting a static size for the array, we'll have a user enter in the number of food they would like to enter. We'll replace this number with a variable to determine the size. What we'll do now is we will declare our string array of foods, but instantiate it later once we know the size. We'll output, what number of food do you want? I'll use print instead of print line. I'll also create an integer variable of size. I'll declare it, but not yet fill it in, until after our prompt. Let's set the size of the array that is, equal to, use our scanner, and call the next int method. We are accepting an integer. Once we know the size of the array, we can finish instantiating it. Let's take our array of foods that we've declared but have not yet assigned, and we'll assign it. Our array is made up of strings. We'll use the new keyword. New, list the data type, string. It's an array, so we need a set of straight brackets. And instead of a number, we're going to use our variable. The user is going to determine what this number is going to be. There's one final step. This is specific for scanners. Since we're accepting an integer, and then we're accepting a string for our user input, we have to clear the input buffer. Next integer isn't going to pick up the new line character at the end. So just to demonstrate that, let's say we want one food item. There's still that new line character within the input buffer. We didn't get the opportunity to enter in a food. We are just going to clear our scanner by using scanner.nextLine, and that will clear it up. All right, let's try this again. What number of food do you want? I want 5. 5 food items. Enter in some food. Pizza, taco, hamburger, hot dog, and sushi. And here's our food. Pizza, taco, hamburger, hot dog, sushi. In summary, to enter in values into an array, you'll likely want to create an empty array, but you need to know the size of the array first. If the size of the array is predetermined, you can always set that to be a number. Otherwise, if one way or another, if a user is going to determine the size of the array, you'll have to get that from the user, and you can set the size of the array to whatever the user types in. Just be sure to do that before filling in the values. If you would like a copy of this code, you can look in the comments section down below. Be sure that you're looking in the playlist. And well, everybody, that is how to enter in user data into an array using Java. What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to show you how we can search through the elements of an array. Let's begin. We'll need an array to work with. To keep this simple, let's create an array of integers. We'll create an array of integers named numbers. Equals, make up some numbers to put within this array. I'll just type whatever comes to mind. Good enough. We'll also need a target. What number are we searching for? Let's say I'm searching for the number 2. I will create an integer variable of target, set it equal to 2. In data structures and algorithms, we'll be performing what is known as a linear search. We're going to use a for loop to iterate through these elements, and then see if there's a match. We'll create a for loop, create an index of I. I will equal 0. We'll continue as long as I is less than our array of numbers, access the length property. That will return the length as a number. Then increment I by 1. I will check using an if statement if our target is equal to our array at the current index of I. At first, I will be 0, and then we increment it during each cycle of this loop. If our target equals the current element, let's print the following. Let's say element found at index plus I. That's our index. In case we find the target, for example 2, we don't need to search through the rest of the array. We could add what is known as a break statement to break out of the loop. If we find the target, break out of the loop. Let's perform a test run. We're searching for the number 2, and we'll be given the index. Element found at index 2. Let's look for 1. 1 is found at index 0. 4, which is near the end, is found at index 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if we don't find our target? I don't have the number 7 in here. Well, there's no output. Since this if statement is never true, once we reach the end of the array, we don't do anything. So let's add a Boolean variable of isFound and set it to be false. We'll check if isFound is false If that is the case, we'll output a message that element wasn't found in the array. So if we do find our target, we'll take our Boolean variable of isFound and set it to be true. We have found our target that we're looking for. If we exit the for loop and never find our target, we can check that. We'll say isFound, but we'll use the not logical operator. The not logical operator gives you the inverse of a Boolean value or variable. If isFound is false, if something isn't true, if we don't find the target, then we execute this if statement, where we will print the following. Let's say something such as element not found in the array. All right, we are looking for the number 7, which does not exist within this array. That would give us this message, element not found in the array. Because isFound was false, we could never find it within this for loop. So we're checking if isFound is not true. What if we have an array of strings and we're searching for an element? Well, instead of using the comparison operator, we have to use the equals method of strings, because strings are a reference data type. So this time, let's say we have an array of strings named fruits. Think of some fruit. I will pick an apple, an orange, and a banana. The target this time will be a string. Let's say I'm searching for an orange. We'll iterate through our array of fruits. The condition for the for loop will be I is less than the length of our array of fruits. Now we can't necessarily say, is our target equal to fruits at index of I? We're comparing two strings, and since strings are reference data types, we would end up comparing the memory addresses of two different strings. We would be saying, are these two memory addresses the same? Are they at the same location? Which isn't the case. If we're comparing the value of strings, we'll use the equals method. Let's take fruits at index of I, call the built-in equals method of strings, and pass in our target as an argument. Now this should work. We are searching for an orange. Element found at index 1. What about a pineapple? Element not found in the array. There was no pineapple. Let's modify this program slightly. We'll accept some user input, but we'll need a scanner. Import the class, java.util.scanner, and close your scanner when you're done with it. Scanner.close. Instead of assigning our target, we'll accept user input. We'll use our scanner, use the next line method, and we will also need a prompt. Let's print the following. Enter a fruit to search for. Just to make this a little more clean, I'm going to move this variable of isFound to the top here. I'll declare our string of target, but not assign it. And then after the prompt, I'll assign our name of target. This is just how I like to arrange things. But it all works the same. Now we can search for an element after accepting user input. And I will convert this to be a print statement instead of print line. Alright, let's search for some fruit. Is there a coconut? Element not found in the array. Perhaps a banana. Element found at index 2. 0, 1, 2. Alright everybody, so that's how to search through an array using Java.